He saved an Apache child. Then her fierce, beautiful mother changed his fate. He walked slowly along the dusty trail, the late afternoon sun beating down on his back. The wind stirred the dry grass and kicked up small clouds of dust, making the path ahead seem hazy. He adjusted the strap of the worn leather bag slung over his shoulder, feeling its weight and thinking about the weight he carried inside himself. The man had been traveling for days, and the further he went, the more he hoped to leave his past behind. The memories, however, were stubborn, following him like shadows that refused to fade. He had once lived a life filled with ambition, with dreams of being someone important, someone respected, but life had other plans. Decisions he thought were right had gone wrong. People he had trusted had turned away. Mistakes he had made, both big and small, seemed to pile on top of him until there was no space left for hope. That was why he had left everything behind: his home, his old friends, and even his own name. He had become a stranger not only to the world but even to himself. As he walked, he noticed how empty the land was. The hills rolled on for miles, dotted with scrub and the occasional tree that offered little shade. Birds circled overhead, and he sometimes heard the far-off sound of water trickling in a hidden stream. Nature, he realized, was the one companion that didn't judge or ask questions. It simply existed. And for a man who had grown tired of the noise and expectations of the world, it was the only kind of company he wanted. He stopped for a moment to drink from his canteen. The water was warm from sitting in the sun, but it quenched his thirst. Taking a deep breath, he scanned the horizon. There was a ridge ahead, where the sunlight glinted off stones, and the shadows of trees stretched long and thin. Something about that ridge made him pause, as though it held secrets he was not yet ready to see. He shivered, though not from cold. The feeling was something more, an instinct that told him he was stepping into a place where the past and the future could meet. The man's mind drifted as he walked. He thought about the people he had lost, friends who had betrayed him, mentors who had abandoned him, and even family members who had stopped believing in him. Each memory was a small thorn in his chest, but he also remembered the small moments of kindness, the rare times someone had smiled at him when he felt invisible, and the rare chance he had been given to make a difference. Those memories were like tiny sparks in the darkness, and he clung to them because they reminded him that maybe not all was lost. As evening approached, the sky began to turn a soft orange, then a deeper red. The shadows grew longer, stretching across the trail like dark fingers. He realized he needed to find a place to rest. There were no towns for miles, only the open land and the occasional grove of trees. He spotted a small clearing with a few bushes and a large rock that could serve as a makeshift seat. Carefully, he set down his bag and took off his boots, letting his tired feet breathe. Each step he had taken today had felt heavier than the last, not only because of the physical effort but because of the burden he carried inside him. Sitting on the rock, he watched as the sun sank lower, casting a golden glow over the hills. The silence was profound, almost overwhelming, but he welcomed it. For a long time he had been surrounded by people and noise, by expectations he could not meet. Now, in this quiet place, he could hear his own thoughts, his own heartbeat. It was both peaceful and painful. The peace reminded him of what he had lost. The pain reminded him that he was still alive, still capable of change if he could find the courage. As darkness fell, he prepared a small fire using dry twigs and leaves. Sparks flew up into the night, and the flames cast dancing shadows across the clearing. The warmth of the fire was comforting, but it also made him reflect on the warmth he had lost in human connection. He had not spoken to anyone in days. Not out of anger, but because he feared what words might bring. Words could reopen old wounds, and he was not ready for that yet. He would stay in this silence, let it wash over him, and maybe, just maybe, find a new path forward. That night, sleep was uneasy. The wind rustled through the bushes, and the distant cry of an owl reminded him of how alone he truly was. Yet, in that solitude, there was a sense of clarity. He realized he was searching for something, though he did not yet know what. Perhaps it was redemption, perhaps forgiveness, or perhaps just a reason to keep walking. Whatever it was, he knew he could not stop moving. The road ahead was uncertain, but he had learned that hiding from the world would not erase his past. Facing it, even slowly, was the only way to find peace. The next morning he awoke to the soft light of dawn. The fire had died down to glowing embers, and the air was crisp with the promise of a new day. He packed his bag, tied his boots, and stepped onto the trail once more. The hills looked different in the morning light, brighter and less threatening. Birds sang from the trees, as if announcing that life continued despite the hardships. He felt a flicker of hope, faint but undeniable. Perhaps this journey was not only about leaving the past behind, but about discovering a purpose he had forgotten. As he moved forward, he noticed signs of life in the distance, tracks on the dirt trail, broken branches, and small footprints in the soft earth. He paused, curious but cautious. The land was not empty after all. Something or someone had been here recently. He could not see anyone yet, but the feeling of presence made him alert. He tightened his grip on his walking stick, scanning the area with careful eyes. Though he had learned to keep his distance from people, his instincts told him that the path ahead was leading him towards something significant, something that would change his journey forever. By midday, he found a small stream. The water was clear and cold, flowing over smooth stones. He knelt and drank deeply, letting the freshness fill his body and clear his mind. The sound of running water was soothing, a small reminder that life could still move forward, even when he felt stuck. He washed his face and hands, the cold water waking him fully to the present moment. In that reflection, he saw a face weathered by life, tired but not defeated. There was still strength there, hidden beneath layers of doubt and regret, waiting for the right moment to emerge. He continued walking, following the stream as it wound through the hills. The land became more rugged, with steep inclines and rocky paths. He had to focus on each step, feeling the rough stones under his feet, listening to the birds and the wind. The solitude was heavy, but he welcomed it. Every mile he walked was a mile farther from the life he had lost and a step closer to something new. He did not yet know what that something was, but for the first time in a long while, he allowed himself to wonder. As the afternoon sun began to dip once more, he glimpsed movement ahead, a small figure, moving quickly but unsteadily across the rocks. At first he thought it was an animal, perhaps a deer or a fox. But as he approached, he realized it was a child, alone and clearly in trouble. Something in his chest tightened, a mix of surprise and instinctual concern. Without thinking, he quickened his pace, moving toward the child. In that moment, the man who had been running from his past felt something unfamiliar, an urgent need to help, to protect. It was the first spark of purpose he had felt in years, and he did not ignore it. The man's heart raced as he quickened his pace toward the small figure. The child, no older than 6 or 7, was stumbling across the rocky terrain, her small arms flailing for balance. Her clothes were torn and dusty, and her feet were bare, leaving tiny prints in the soft earth. The sun glinted off her hair, and her eyes, wide and frightened, locked on the rocks ahead as she struggled to keep moving. For a moment he simply froze, studying her, trying to understand what had brought her here, alone in such dangerous land. Then instinct took over. Without thinking about himself or the risks, he called out gently, "Hey, little one, are you okay?" "Wait." His voice was calm but firm, carrying across the small canyon. The child stumbled but did not stop. She was afraid, not of him, but of something else, something unseen yet pressing, as though she was running from a threat. He didn't know what it was, but he knew he had to act fast. He dropped his bag, tucked his walking stick under his arm, and ran toward her, every step carefully placed on the uneven rocks. "Stop! You'll fall!" he shouted. His voice had a new kind of urgency, one that startled even him. He had never felt so strongly compelled to protect someone before. As he neared her, he saw that she had scraped her knee on the jagged rocks, and blood had begun to stain her pants. Her small body shook, not just from pain but from fear. She stumbled again, and he lunged, catching her just before she hit the ground. The child froze in his arms, trembling. Her dark eyes searched his face, suspicion and fear mingling with relief. He held her gently, careful not to scare her further. "It's okay. You're safe now. I won't let anything happen to you," he whispered, his voice softer this time, almost as if he were speaking to himself. She did not respond, only clung to him, her little hands gripping his shirt. He looked around, realizing how alone they were. The trail they had been following was narrow and surrounded by steep rocks and thick brush. Any wrong step could send someone tumbling down a slope. He set her down carefully on a flat rock and examined her injuries. Her knee was scraped and bleeding, and there were small cuts on her hands from the rocks. He tore a piece of cloth from his own shirt and began to gently clean and bandage her wounds. The child watched him silently, her trust slowly forming, though she still flinched at sudden movements. He worked quickly but carefully, his hands steady despite the tension in his chest. He had never been particularly good with children, but instinct guided him. He remembered stories of people who had cared for others in times of danger, stories he had dismissed as noble but distant. Now he realized that nobility was not something distant. It was simple. It was helping someone when they needed it most. Once the wounds were cleaned and loosely bandaged, he offered her some water from his canteen. She took it hesitantly, her small lips pressing against the metal rim. He smiled gently, encouraging her. "Drink. It's okay. You're safe." The relief on her face was visible, though her body still trembled from shock. She sipped slowly, and when she had finished, she leaned against him slightly, as though drawing strength from his presence. He glanced around again, searching for any signs of danger. There was nothing visible, no animals, no people. But he could feel the tension in the air, the sense that they were not entirely alone. He realized that the child must have been separated from her family, either lost or fleeing from something threatening. The thought filled him with concern. He had seen children left alone before, in towns and on roads, but never in such a wild, dangerous place. The land was unforgiving, and any moment of hesitation could lead to disaster. "What's your name?" he asked gently, crouching to be at her level. The child looked at him with wide, cautious eyes. For a long moment, she did not answer. Then, in a soft, almost whispered voice, she said, "Hahioka." The name sounded delicate and strong at the same time. He nodded, committing it to memory. "Hahioka. Okay. That's a beautiful name," he said with a reassuring smile. Her eyes flickered with a hint of trust, and he felt a strange warmth in his chest, a connection he had not anticipated. He decided they needed to move to a safer place, somewhere sheltered and flat where she could rest and he could think. Carefully lifting her into his arms again, he carried her across the rocky terrain, choosing the most stable paths and speaking softly to keep her calm. He realized that she was very light, almost fragile, yet she carried a quiet resilience, a determination to keep moving despite fear and pain. Something about her reminded him of the strength that existed in even the smallest beings, the courage that could survive against the odds. As they walked, he began to notice small details that told him more about her situation. There were footprints leading into the brush, larger adult footprints that had vanished before the child had reached this place. There were broken branches, signs of a struggle, perhaps, or hurried movement. He did not know what had happened, but he understood that this was serious. Someone had lost this child, and he had found her at the exact right moment. The sun was beginning to lower, and the air cooled. He found a small alcove of rocks that created a natural shelter from the wind. He set Ahioka down, allowing her to rest. She curled up slightly, exhausted from the fear and exertion. He sat nearby, keeping watch. He knew he could not leave her alone, not even for a minute. The world was full of dangers, wild animals, treacherous terrain, and perhaps even people who might not have kind intentions. While she rested, he thought about what he would do next. Taking a child into the wild was not simple. He did not know where her family was, and he did not know how to return her safely. But one thing was clear. He could not abandon her. That was not who he wanted to be, not anymore. He had spent so long running from responsibility, from mistakes, from people. But here, in the quiet of the wilderness, holding this frightened little girl, he felt a sense of purpose stir inside him. Ahioka stirred, blinking up at him with wary eyes. I'm scared, she whispered. He nodded, understanding more than words could express.
I know, little one. I know.
But you're safe with me. I won't let anything happen to you. His voice was firm, but gentle, a promise that he intended to keep. For the first time in a long while, he felt a responsibility that was not burdensome, but freeing. He realized that protecting someone else could give meaning to his own life, a chance to make up, in some small way, for the mistakes of his past. The day passed slowly as they stayed in the natural shelter. He shared a small portion of his food with her, some bread and dried meat he had brought along. Ahioka ate cautiously at first, then with more confidence once she realized she was truly safe. He watched her carefully, noticing the small things, the way she picked at the crumbs, the way her eyes flicked toward the shadows, the way she occasionally smiled despite her fear. He began to feel a deep sense of connection, a bond formed not by words, but by shared survival and care. As night fell, he built a small fire, careful to keep it controlled and safe. Ahioka sat close, wrapped in a cloth he had provided for warmth. She was quiet, but he could feel her trust growing. He stayed awake much of the night, listening to the sounds of the wilderness, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of an owl, the whisper of the wind through the rocks. He felt alert, aware, ready to protect her if needed. And yet, amidst the tension, there was a strange calm, a quiet understanding that this moment, difficult as it was, mattered more than anything else he had done in years. Throughout the night he thought about what he would do next. He could not simply wander with her indefinitely. He needed a plan, a way to ensure she was reunited with her family, or at least kept safe until help could arrive. But he also understood that rushing could be dangerous. Patience, care, and caution were required. He would do whatever it took to keep her alive, to keep her safe. And as he watched her sleeping peacefully by the fire, he felt a determination stronger than fear, stronger than anything that had held him back before. By the time dawn broke, he had made his decision. He would continue moving, but cautiously, carefully choosing paths that were safer and more visible. He would keep Ahioka close, protect her, and learn as much as he could about the land they were in. He did not yet know where her family was, or if they were even alive, but he had a clear resolve. He would not abandon her, not now, not ever. She had changed something within him, a spark he had long thought extinguished, and he would honor that spark with every step he took, carrying her safely through the dangers that lay ahead. The next morning the man awoke to the soft golden light filtering through the trees. The fire he had kept alive through the night had burned low, leaving only glowing embers that painted the rocks with a faint warm light. Ahioka was already awake, sitting on the edge of the small clearing, her tiny legs dangling over the rocks. She looked at him with cautious eyes, and he could see that although she was physically stronger than before, the fear from the previous day still lingered in her expression. He smiled gently at her and offered a small piece of dried bread he had saved. "Here, eat something." "You need strength for today," he said. She hesitated at first, then took it slowly, biting carefully, as if testing whether he could truly be trusted. The man nodded to himself. Trust, he realized, was fragile. It could not be forced. All he could do was be patient and show her that he was not a threat. Suddenly, movement in the trees caught his attention. At first, he thought it was an animal, perhaps a deer or a fox. But then he saw a figure, a woman, moving swiftly and gracefully toward them. Her presence was commanding, her movements precise, and her eyes sharp, scanning the area with unmistakable intensity. She was tall, strong, and carried herself with confidence, yet there was a softness in her gaze when it briefly fell on Ahioka. Ahioka stiffened, her small body pressing close to him. "Mama?" she whispered, her voice trembling with hope and fear all at once. The man's heart skipped a beat. He had not expected anyone else to appear, and now he realized that the child's family was closer than he had imagined. He stood slowly, positioning himself between the woman and Ahayoka, unsure of what to expect. The woman's eyes, dark and piercing, fixed on him. There was a moment of tense silence, as if the world itself had paused. Then she spoke, her voice calm but carrying authority. "Who are you?" The man met her gaze steadily, trying to appear open and honest, despite the unease he felt. I found her," he said simply. "She was alone and hurt. I couldn't leave her." The woman's expression softened for a brief instant, just enough for him to see the concern in her eyes. But then it hardened again. A protective shield, born from fear and experience. "Where is she hurt?" she asked, stepping closer but keeping a careful distance. The man pointed to her bandaged knee and the small cuts on her hands. "I cleaned them and bandaged them as best I could," he explained. "She is safe now." The woman knelt slowly beside Ayoka, gently lifting her into her arms. The child clung to her, burying her face in her mother's shoulder. The mother's hands moved with skill and care, inspecting each small injury. The man watched quietly, understanding that this woman was both powerful and tender, capable of protecting her child fiercely while showing the love that Ahayoka clearly needed. After ensuring her child was as comfortable as possible, the woman's gaze returned to the man. There was suspicion in her eyes, and he could feel the weight of her judgment. "Why should I trust you?" she asked. Her tone was not angry, but it carried the authority of a mother who had fought to keep her child alive. The man swallowed hard. He knew that words alone could not prove his intentions. Only actions could. "I saved her," he said simply. "I found her when she was alone. I could not leave her. That is all." He held her gaze, hoping she could sense the truth in his words. The woman studied him, her eyes searching for any sign of deceit or hidden motives. For a long moment there was nothing but the sound of the wind rustling through the trees and the soft breathing of the child in her arms. Then, slowly, her shoulders relaxed slightly. "You have a good heart," she said finally, her voice quiet but firm. "But intentions alone do not guarantee safety. You must understand that. We live in a world that can be cruel, and trust must be earned." The man nodded. He understood completely. He had spent years running from trust, from responsibility, and from people who had hurt him. Now he realized that trust was not something to fear, but something to earn through patience and consistent care. The woman stood and glanced at Ahayoka, who was now nestled safely against her chest. "She is lucky to have found you," she continued, addressing him. "But luck can only take us so far. Care, vigilance, and respect. These are what truly protect a child." He felt the weight of her words, and a quiet determination settled in his chest. He had been given a second chance to act rightly, and he would not waste it. Over the next few hours, the man observed the interaction between mother and child. Ahayoka spoke softly, telling her mother about how he had found her, how he had cared for her wounds, and how he had kept her safe through the night. The mother listened, her eyes never leaving him, weighing each word carefully. She asked questions, sharp and precise, testing the man's honesty and resolve. And each time he answered truthfully, never exaggerating, never hiding anything. Gradually, the tension in her posture softened. She began to see not just a stranger, but someone who had acted with courage and compassion when it mattered most. "You risked yourself to save her," she said at one point, her voice softer than before. "That is no small thing." He nodded, feeling a warmth in his chest he had not felt in years. Recognition, respect, a silent bond forming, born from shared concern for the child. As the day wore on, the mother and the man worked together to care for Ayoka. She taught him how to prepare simple food, how to move safely through the rocks and trees, and how to be aware of the subtle signs of danger in the wilderness. He listened carefully, absorbing her knowledge, realizing that this was more than just guidance. It was a lesson in trust, responsibility, and connection. Each instruction, each shared moment, was a bridge forming between them, small but strong, across the gap of suspicion and fear. During a quiet moment, the mother looked at him with a penetrating gaze. "You have not known true family," she said softly, almost to herself. You run from it, or perhaps it ran from you.
But there is always a way back, if you choose it. He felt a shiver run down his spine. Her words were not a judgment. They were a challenge, a reminder that life did not have to be defined by past mistakes.
He realized she was not only protecting her child but offering him a chance to redefine himself. By evening, the three of them had found a small, sheltered area near the stream. Ahioka played quietly with stones and leaves, her trust in both adults slowly growing. The mother watched her closely, then turned her attention to him. "You will stay near us for now," she said. "Not because I fully trust you yet, but because she needs safety, and you have shown that you can provide it. We will see how this unfolds." He nodded, understanding that trust could not be rushed. He had spent a lifetime expecting rejection, betrayal, and disappointment. Now, for the first time, he felt the possibility of connection, not just with a child, but with a mother who had the strength, courage, and wisdom to see through his faults and recognize his potential. As night fell, the mother sat by the fire with Ahioka on her lap, while he kept watch nearby. The glow of the flames illuminated her face, strong and beautiful, filled with a quiet power that demanded respect. He realized that this woman, who had first appeared as a stranger and potential threat, had already begun to change him. She challenged him, questioned him, and yet inspired him all at once. He had never encountered anyone like her, someone who could combine fierce protection with gentle love, and who could see the best in others, even when the world had taught them to hide it. That night, sleep came slowly for the man. He kept thinking about the mother's words, the trust he had begun to earn, and the responsibility that now rested on his shoulders. Saving Ahioka had been instinctive, almost automatic, but the mother's presence added a new layer to his journey, one that required patience, honesty, and courage. He realized that he could not merely be a passerby in their lives. He had a choice to make: continue wandering aimlessly, or embrace this new path that demanded strength, care, and connection. By the time dawn broke, painting the sky with soft pink and gold, the man felt a quiet determination within himself. The mother had not only arrived to protect her child, but she had also shown him a reflection of who he could become, a man capable of courage, kindness, and loyalty. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of purpose, a reason to move forward, not just for himself but for others who now depended on him. And in that moment, he understood that the path ahead would not be easy. Trust, once broken, was hard to rebuild, but he was ready to try. The mother had changed the rules of his life, not by force, but by showing him the strength of love and protection. And as they prepared to continue their journey together, he knew that this encounter, brief as it might have seemed at first, was the beginning of something that would alter the course of all their lives. The next morning, the man awoke to the sound of birds singing and the gentle rush of the stream nearby. He stretched his tired limbs and glanced toward the mother and Ahioka. The child was already awake, picking small stones from the ground and lining them up carefully, a quiet game that seemed to help her regain a sense of normalcy. The mother was moving gracefully, gathering water and preparing a simple breakfast. Her movements were deliberate, confident, and filled with a rhythm that spoke of years spent knowing the land intimately. He realized he had much to learn from her, not just about caring for Ahioka, but about surviving and thriving in a world that could be both beautiful and harsh. He had lived in cities surrounded by noise, rules, and expectations, yet he had never truly understood patience, observation, or the strength that came from living in harmony with nature. Here, in the wilderness, he began to see another way of life, one that was simple, respectful, and powerful in ways he had never known. After breakfast, the mother spoke to him, her voice calm but firm. "You will come with me," she said. "There is much you must understand if you are to stay near us. You must learn our ways, our rules, and the ways we protect each other." He nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. He had been wandering through life without purpose, avoiding responsibility. And now he was being given a chance not just to help, but to belong, to understand a life that valued courage, care, and honor above all. As they walked, she taught him about the land. She pointed out edible plants, how to move quietly over rocks and through underbrush, and how to read the subtle signs that indicated danger or opportunity. He listened carefully, absorbing every detail. At first he fumbled, tripping over roots or misidentifying a plant, but she did not scold him. Instead, she corrected him gently, explaining the reasons behind each lesson. He began to understand that this was more than survival. It was a connection to the world, to the earth, and to people who lived in respect and balance. Ahayoko walked close to her mother, occasionally glancing back at him. He noticed how the mother encouraged her, teaching small lessons in patience, attention, and respect for nature. Watching them together, he felt a mix of admiration and humility. This woman had endured challenges he could not imagine, and had raised her child in a way that combined strength, wisdom, and love. He realized that she had changed his perception of courage. He had thought courage was facing danger alone, but here he saw that courage could also be measured by the ability to protect, nurture, and teach. As the day progressed, they reached a small settlement hidden among the hills. The man had never seen anything like it. The houses were simple, built from wood and stone, blending naturally into the landscape. Smoke rose from small hearths, carrying the scent of cooking and warmth. Children ran and played freely, watched closely by elders who moved with a quiet authority. He realized that this was a community rooted in trust, respect, and shared responsibility. Everyone had a role. Everyone cared for each other, and the balance between freedom and guidance was delicate but strong. The mother led him through the settlement, introducing him carefully to a few elders. Their eyes were watchful, evaluating him silently. The man felt the weight of their scrutiny, but also a sense of possibility. He was an outsider, yes, but he had shown courage and care in saving Nahioka. That action, simple though it might have seemed, was the first proof of his worth in their eyes. He bowed slightly, showing respect, and the elders nodded in acknowledgement. For hours he followed the mother, learning the routines, the skills, and the small yet powerful ways this community lived in harmony. He learned to gather water without disturbing the flow, to build small fires safely, and to move quietly so as not to frighten animals or children. Every task, no matter how small, carried a lesson. He realized that life here was not easy, but it was meaningful. Every action had purpose, every decision mattered, and every life, human, animal, or plant, was respected. As they paused for a midday meal, the mother spoke quietly to him. "You have been running for a long time," she said. "Running from people, running from mistakes, running from yourself. Here, you cannot run. You must face the world as it is, and face yourself as you are. Only then can you truly protect and care for others." Her words struck him deeply. He had spent years trying to escape, thinking distance and isolation could erase his past. Now he understood that avoidance did not heal wounds. Action, responsibility, and connection did. He looked at Ahioka, playing with other children now, laughing freely for the first time since he had found her. Her laughter was like sunlight breaking through clouds, a reminder that even in a world filled with struggle, moments of joy were possible. He realized that protecting her was no longer just about survival. It was about nurturing life, about being present, and about learning from the people who lived fully despite hardship. As evening approached, the mother took him aside. "There is more to learn," she said. "Not only about the land, but about people. About trust, loyalty, and strength. You have shown courage, but you must also show humility. You must learn to listen, to observe, and to act with wisdom, not just impulse." He nodded, understanding that this was a lesson in character, not just skill. Courage without wisdom could be dangerous. Care without understanding could fail. She was teaching him to grow, to become a man capable of more than survival. Over the next few days, he continued to learn. He helped gather firewood, carried water, and assisted in small tasks around the settlement. Each action was guided by the mother, her eyes sharp, her instructions clear. Sometimes she challenged him, asking why he had made certain choices in his past, forcing him to confront the regrets and mistakes he had tried to bury. At first he struggled, defensive and uneasy. But gradually he realized that her questions were not meant to shame him, but to help him understand himself. to teach him the strength that comes from honesty and reflection. Ahioka often watched their interactions with wide eyes. She seemed to understand that this was part of the man's journey as much as her own. Sometimes she would come up quietly, holding his hand or placing a small flower in his palm, a gesture of trust and connection. Those moments, small and simple, reminded him that the bonds we form with others can be powerful, even when words are few. He began to feel a sense of belonging he had never known, a connection not only to the child but to the mother, and through her guidance to the wider community. One afternoon they encountered a small challenge. A young child had wandered too close to a steep cliff, and the man following the mother's instructions moved quickly to guide the child to safety. His heart pounded, but he acted with careful precision, using the lessons he had learned over the past days. The mother watched closely, her eyes alert, ready to intervene if needed. When the child was safe, she nodded at him, a silent acknowledgement of his growth and capability. In that moment, he understood that learning was not only about skill, but about trust earned through consistent action. By evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, the man sat near the fire with the mother and Ahioka. The day had been long, filled with learning, observation, and small victories. He felt exhaustion, but it was the satisfying kind, the kind that comes from knowing you have grown, even in small ways. The mother spoke softly, her voice carrying wisdom and warmth. "You have done well today," she said. "Not because you are perfect, but because you tried, because you paid attention, and because you acted with care. That is what matters." He looked at her, gratitude and respect filling his chest. She had challenged him, guided him, and, without force, reshaped the way he saw himself. He had begun as a man running from his past, uncertain of his value, and now he was learning to stand strong, to act wisely, and to care deeply. The bond between them had deepened, built on shared experience, trust, and mutual respect. That night, as the stars appeared in the clear sky, he reflected on how much had changed in such a short time. He had found Ahioka, saved her, and through the mother's guidance begun to understand courage, care, and community. He realized that his past mistakes did not define him. They were only part of the story. What mattered now was how he chose to act, how he chose to learn, and how he chose to protect those who depended on him. He lay near the fire, listening to the gentle breathing of Ahioka and the steady presence of her mother. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of calm, a feeling that he was not alone, and that his actions could have meaning beyond himself. The mother had changed the rules of his life, showing him that true strength is not in running, but in standing, learning, and caring for others. And as sleep finally came, he knew that the journey ahead would be challenging, but that he was no longer walking it alone. The next morning, the man woke to the soft glow of dawn spilling over the hills. The world felt alive, in a way he had never noticed before. The wind carried the scent of wildflowers, the stream gurgled with clear water, and birds sang from the trees above. He looked at Ahioka, who was already awake and helping her mother gather small bundles of firewood. Watching them, he realized how much had changed since he first found her alone and scared on the rocky trail. She was no longer trembling with fear. She laughed and moved with confidence, protected by the love and guidance of her mother. The mother turned to him with a serious expression. "Today, we must leave this place," she said. "There are dangers beyond these hills. You will come with us. But you must understand, the choices you make today will shape not only your life, but the life of this child."
He nodded, feeling the weight of her words.
He had been running from choices his whole life, avoiding responsibility and the consequences of his actions. Now, he faced a decision that could not be avoided. As they packed their few belongings, the man noticed the determination in the mother's movements. Every action she took was purposeful, precise, and careful. She moved like someone who had faced the harshest parts of the world and had survived, not by force alone, but by wisdom, courage, and understanding. Her strength was quiet but undeniable, commanding respect without demanding it. He felt a sense of awe and deep admiration mixed with a quiet awareness that her eyes were watching him closely, evaluating him not with suspicion, but with expectation. As they began walking, the terrain became more challenging. Steep rocks, loose soil, and narrow paths tested their balance and focus. The man carried Ayoko when needed, and when the path allowed, she ran ahead under the careful supervision of her mother. Along the way, they encountered small challenges, a wild animal crossing their path, an unstable cliffside, and patches of thorny brush. Each time the man relied on the lessons he had learned: patience, attention, careful planning, and respect for the land. He realized that courage was no longer just about bold action, but about wisdom and care. As they paused near a stream to rest, the mother spoke to him. "You have changed," she said softly, her voice carrying a mixture of authority and warmth. "When I first saw you, I did not trust you. You were a stranger, a man whose life was filled with uncertainty and mistakes. But I see now that you are willing to act with care and responsibility. That is how you protect others, and that is how you shape your own destiny." He felt a warmth in his chest, a mixture of pride, gratitude, and humility. He had never been praised for his actions in such a meaningful way before, and yet he knew it was not praise alone. This was a recognition of growth, of change, and of potential realized. Ahioka approached him shyly, holding out a small flower she had picked along the trail. "For you," she said quietly. Her eyes sparkled with trust and affection. He took the flower gently, feeling a lump in his throat. This simple gesture, given freely by a child he had saved and nurtured, carried more meaning than words could express. It was a symbol of connection, a bridge between his past and the life he could now embrace. He smiled and nodded, placing the flower carefully in his bag as a reminder of the new path he was walking. As they continued their journey, the man began to notice subtle signs of the wider world beyond the hills. Smoke rose from distant valleys, sounds of activity carried faintly on the wind, and the land seemed both inviting and threatening at the same time. The mother remained vigilant, her eyes scanning the surroundings, her senses attuned to danger and opportunity alike. He realized that her strength was not only in physical skill but in awareness, foresight, and the ability to act decisively when required. He began to learn that true strength was a combination of courage, care, and understanding. By midday, they reached a plateau that offered a wide view of the valley below. The man paused, taking in the vastness of the landscape. It was beautiful, wild, and full of life, but it was also clear that danger could appear at any moment. He understood why the mother had insisted on careful movement and vigilance. Here, the lessons she had taught him, patience, observation, and respect for the land, were not theoretical. They were necessary for survival. He felt a deep respect for her wisdom and a quiet determination to honor it. As they set up a small rest area, the mother spoke again, her tone serious. "You must understand something," she said. "Life is not measured by how far you run or how fast you move. Life is measured by the choices you make when faced with challenge, fear, or uncertainty. Today, you will face a choice that will define you." He nodded, his mind racing. He had spent so long running from his past, but now, standing here with the child and her mother, he understood that running was no longer an option. He had to face his fears, embrace responsibility, and act with courage and wisdom. Hours passed, and the path grew steeper. Ahioka occasionally slipped or stumbled, and each time he caught her or guided her carefully, feeling a sense of purpose and connection that was new and profound. The mother watched silently, approving of his careful attention and occasionally offering guidance. The bond between the three of them grew stronger with each step, built not on words alone, but on shared effort, trust, and mutual respect. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, they came across a dangerous river crossing. The water was swift, the rocks slippery, and the current strong. The mother stopped, studying the river carefully. "We must be careful," she said. "One wrong step could be fatal." She looked at him with piercing eyes. "You will guide Ahioka across first." His chest tightened. The responsibility was immense, but he knew he was ready. He had learned patience, awareness, and care over the past days, and now it was time to put those lessons into action. He carried Ahioka carefully, speaking softly to calm her fears. "Hold on tight, little one, we will be safe," he whispered. She clung to him, trusting his words completely. Step by step, he moved across the slippery rocks, using his weight and balance to ensure they did not fall. The current tugged at him, the water splashing over his boots, but he focused on every movement, every sound, every step. Finally, they reached the other side safely. He set Ahioka down and allowed her to run to her mother, relief washing over all three of them. The mother smiled, a rare expression of warmth and approval. "You have done well," she said, "not just for her but for yourself. You have proven that courage and care can walk together. That is how you shape your destiny." He felt a deep sense of fulfillment, a mix of pride, humility, and gratitude. For years he had thought he was defined by mistakes and failures. Now he understood that his actions, his choices, and his willingness to care for others defined who he truly was. As night fell, they set up a small camp near a safe area. Ahioka played quietly, her laughter echoing softly, while the mother prepared food and tended to small tasks. The man sat nearby, reflecting on the journey that had brought him here. He had begun as a man lost in his past, running from responsibility and fear. He had found Ahioka by chance, cared for her, and through the mother's guidance discovered strength, wisdom, and purpose he had never thought possible. The mother spoke softly as the fire crackled. "You have changed," she said. "Not because I saved you or guided you, but because you are willing to act, to care, and to grow. That is how fate is shaped, not by chance, but by choices made with courage and wisdom." He nodded, feeling the truth of her words deep in his heart. For the first time he felt that his life had meaning beyond survival, beyond running, beyond regret. He had found connection, purpose, and a future worth embracing. The next morning they began the final part of their journey together. The land ahead was challenging, but the man felt ready. He had learned to trust himself, to trust the mother, and to protect Ahioka. Each step he took was deliberate, each action guided by care and awareness. He understood that life would always bring challenges, but he now had the tools, knowledge, and heart to face them. When they finally reached a safe settlement where Ahioka could be reunited with extended family, and where the mother could continue her life in safety and strength, the man felt a mix of pride and emotion. He had saved a child, learned from her mother, and discovered a strength within himself he had never known. The mother looked at him with respect and warmth. "You have changed your fate," she said simply. "Not because I chose to, but because you are willing to step forward, to act with courage, and to embrace responsibility. That is how lives are transformed." He nodded, understanding fully. His journey had begun with running, but it ended with connection, courage, and care. Ahioka held his hand one last time, her small fingers wrapped around his, a silent thank you that carried more meaning than words. He realized that saving her had not only changed her life, it had rewritten his own destiny. He was no longer a man running from the past. He was a man capable of love, responsibility, and meaningful action. As he watched them walk into the settlement, he felt a quiet peace. The mother had taught him, challenged him, and inspired him. Ahioka had shown him the power of trust and innocence, and together they had reshaped his life in ways he could never have imagined. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past lift, replaced by a sense of purpose and hope. The journey had been difficult, but it had brought him to a place of clarity, connection, and possibility. And for the first time he truly believed that his future could be bright, because he had chosen it, step by step, with courage and care.